converted man here. I've got Christian Apologetics, aka Tom, which stands for Things Over Mass. I don't know. It doesn't stand for anything. That's just
I'll take it. Could have been worse.
came up with that on the fly. Welcome
Exactly.
to this, whatever this is. I'm asking you questions about your background in faith because this is your channel, and I have that linked in the description along with your X. And so I said some dated things on your channel, and then we're like, hey, let's do a talk. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, let's do that. And I'm like, oh, you're precept? I hate precept. We're not going to talk about that ever. Let's do it just to talk about anything. I'll interview you. Anything but precept. So we're not going to talk about that until the end. So what was your let's start in with your background in for as far as your family. Like, did you have a religious upbringing? Was it mom had one thing, dad had another, or a mixed bag, or what was that like?
So I had two Christian parents. Probably you could describe as like Baptist theology, I would say. Um, my dad's entire side was Catholic, but for a while, or I guess I would say the Catholic Church has just become more and more corrupt over the years, and so they kind of left that behind. And my dad eventually became more Protestant Christian, and so that's what we were raised in. And I would say I'm still basically a brand of that now. I'm more Reformed or Presbyterian leaning Christian now, so there's some variation on it, but I think for this channel's distinctions, yeah, Protestant Christian is what the umbrella would be for me. Doesn't mean I've always been as informed on it through my entire life. I would say like a few years ago, even there were times where I was definitely questioning things, and I just didn't feel like I had a great grasp of it. So it happens to people. They'll have agnostic phases or phases where they kind of maybe don't understand things, and then until a few years ago, I really started to researching the truth and apologetics, and that's when I actually came across precept arguments. And it's funny because people's always like, oh, has precept ever convinced anybody? And it's like, well, it did convince me. So there's one in the
Yeah,
column.
that was funny. I was gonna ask you that very question later on. So let's go back a bit because you mentioned there's a wide variety of flavors, if you will, of Protestant. Did you have a particular church that you guys went to, like Baptist or Lutheran or what have you?
Yeah, I would say I went to a Baptist church that my mom's family went to for many years. I think we went there for quite a while. Then they had a bit of a pastoral change, and then it kind of the church deteriorated a little bit, and so they ended up going to a different sort of non-denominational church for a while. And then I probably was very intermittent with attendance. I mean, college was very busy, and I just was not super into attending church at that moment. Doesn't mean I wasn't Christian still, but I just didn't feel as compelled to do so, I
Did
guess would be the answer.
Was there like a youth group or anything like that, or?
I mean, at some churches there's youth problems at a lot of churches, unfortunately, especially in the area I live. It's a little more of like a atheist liberal area, you could say. So there's not a lot of like Christian youth sometimes, so they can struggle with that. Or it happens to be a lot of the youth will be at very like charismatic churches, which I don't really agree with. So I'm kind of sometimes stuck between a rock and a hard place where like I'm the only one under 30 at my church sometimes. But
Yeah, so so this has been kind of your thing throughout life, as far as being exposed to religion pretty young, and being kind of a constant. Um, did you spend as a kid or as you became a teenager, did you spend a lot of time thinking about these things, or was it maybe kind of like a Sunday thing only, and then it became more important to you?
we actually discussed like these topics as a family a lot, like all through my childhood, and my dad was very involved in bringing up arguments for and against, and how we would combat arguments for atheism or Islam or other religions like that. So I've actually been engaged with this for a while. I've been debating Mormons at my doorstep since I was like 14. I mean, so I was debating my Catholic monk professors when I was in college. So I've been heavily involved in this. I remember debating my high school biology teacher on evolution and things like that. So I've definitely thought about these topics for a while. It wasn't
So that
just, and I,
so
yeah,
so
go
it's
ahead.
kind of important to you, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. It certainly is. Even if it wasn't always the primary thing in my entire life, it's definitely always been important to me to some degree, and recently probably very important. So,
Do did you take a lot of time for, some people say that, this sounds pretty intellectual, where's the spiritual component? Did you spend a lot of time reading the Bible or praying or worship on your own, separate from church or anything like that? Or
yeah, I mean, and even for parts of our family, we would do church at home when we didn't feel like we just had a church we really thought fit our views, and so yeah, a lot of definitely praying by ourselves. And I've read through the Bible a couple times at this point. It's a large book if you haven't realized yet, but yeah, reading through the Bible and praying together. Yeah, that's always been a part of my life. Not always perfect in that, and definitely have had variations there. But yeah, I would say in terms of a cross section of people, definitely someone was brought up in that and engaged in that with my family for quite a while through my whole upbringing there. Hopefully that answers the question.
yeah, yeah. So when you hit teenager, usually people get rebellious and whatnot. So did you kind of was it a difficult kind of teenager ish time for you? Did faith kind of fall away maybe during that time, or was that just kind of more in the background as you focused more on girls, guys, or whatever? You know, uh, what was your teenage time like? Was it I'm a rebel without a clue, or you know or was it kind
Yeah,
of like a muted sort of like I'm going to be a good Christian teenager kind of thing?
yeah, I mean, I've just personally never been into like the party rebellious scene. It's just not my thing. I still don't drink at all, and not because like I can't. I don't see the point. Like I don't know. Um, I definitely, of course, like my Christian values is going to relate to that, and I'm going to try and be as obedient as possible to that and what I believe in. But I was never a part of that scene. And I mean, in high school for sure, like you're just very distracted. There's a lot going on, and sometimes you're not the best about it in terms of keeping up with your faith. But I never really, I feel like, fell away or just completely like disregarded it all. To I'm gonna steal the car and go to the stereotypical '80s teenage party and do what do whatever they show in movies that
Yeah,
they
I
tell
don't.
you is fun.
Stealing a car. I don't even know how you would do that. Like, what church were you going to? They never taught us that. That must
Yeah,
have been the
or
Catholic church.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I stole the Pope Mobile and I took it
Yeah,
to
right.
the
Yeah.
local fair.
Now that if you're gonna get arrested, that's the way to go.
Yeah,
Grand
oh no,
theft Pope Mobile, right? Um,
exactly.
so and then it, did you find any issues from one type of denomination to another? Did you pretty much have the same denomination throughout your life up to this point?
Yeah, I would say I was basically Baptist non-denominational Christianity until probably like a year ago, where I became more reformed as I studied it more. And not that I don't think Baptists or non-denominationals aren't brothers in Christ, they are. I just, as more I studied it, I found the traditional aspects of maybe Reformed or Presbyterian theology more based in history and more traditional, more reverent, more based in the mainline institutions, and so that's what kind of led me there. And I find the theology to be more biblical over other groups. I never really had interest in becoming Catholic, and I don't find Orthodoxy very convincing. So that's kind of where I ended up. But I spent a year kind of exploring all aspects of Christianity, trying to really find out what was true, and that's kind of what I ended up landing on.
Yeah, you mentioned a Catholic monk. So did you have a Catholic school or a religious school that you were going to?
So my college was a Catholic college. I didn't go there because I was Catholic, but it just happened to have a really good program for what I was studying, and so it was a Catholic school. So I was exposed to all of that, and I actually had many good conversations with many of the monks there. I'm good friends with one of the oldest monks there, and so I got along with them. And yeah, there's aspects, of course, to Catholicism that's going to be adjacent to Protestant Christianity, but there's also big differences
Yeah,
as
and
well.
your dad kind of started with that, so
Yeah,
I thought you might have some exposure to it because I know they have more books in the Bible. It's called I think
yeah,
the
deuterocanonical.
Apocrypha and all that. But Protestants are like, no, we don't like that. I don't know why. It's
Yeah.
never been clear to me exactly what
Oh, yeah.
happened.
So essentially, what we call the deuterocanonical books is what the Catholic Church has, and really, the Catholic Church never had a set canon, as many people try to say, because they have a magisterial authority in their church, which is headed by the Pope, of course. And so, as a response to the Reformation, where basically many of the reformers saw that the deuterocanonical books were never really considered by many of the early church fathers and theologians to be God inspired or God breathed in the same way that the other New Testament or Old Testament books were. And so it wasn't that they found them and then took them out of the Bible. They were never canonized. And really, they found the books that were
Yeah,
God breathed
that
in.
that that darn Martin Luther really started something when he nailed the thing to the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he would have, like looking at Christian history, it's like nailing stuff to wood. That started the whole thing in the first place. So what was you thinking? No,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I,
But
yeah.
yeah,
So,
it started. Yeah, because the Catholic Church, like, there's a couple of versions ish of Catholicism, but
yeah,
there's a ton of Protestant, and so there
yeah,
there does seem to be a disconnect. There's not like when someone says the word theology, there isn't like a theological method, like a scientific method where everybody would be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put all the ideas that we have and see which ones we can, to get to one single thing.
right.
And it's so weird that can't happen, hasn't happened. People have tried now and again, but what do you think is making that not possible
Right.
or
So
difficult?
what you're referring to basically is ecumenicalism or ecumenicism, which, in terms of, like, let's take the three largest groups or buckets of Christianity, which is going to be Eastern Orthodoxy, Catholicism, and Protestantism. And if you wanted to say, well, why can't even the groups of the Protestants, quote unquote, agree? Well, we just have a different view of what the church is, which is just ecclesia, which is the body of believers. We have a different fundamental view of what that is compared to the Catholic or even Orthodox churches, where they believe it's firmly established in their institution and their magisterial authority. So we're going to reject that format of how the church is made up. And so there's basically fundamental, irreconcilable differences between the different institutions. All three churches, however, would ascribe to Nicene Christianity and the Nicene Creed. We would basically all agree on that. And for a Protestant, we were okay with saying, basically, if you have the Nicene Creed, if you have the gospel, you can be saved. You don't have to be a part of one specific institution, because we do believe that the church is composed of an invisible church. So,
Well, there are a couple of offshoots of Christianity that certainly have put their proverbial foot in the sand and said you have to do certain things to be saved
mhm,
above and beyond, like some Pentecostals
mhm.
have it, you must speak with the tongues or you don't have the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit.
So, like, Mormons and certain Trinity denying Pentecostal groups would be considered sort of outside of that. Um, and that's based on what we find in scripture and our doctrines, and also the creeds following the apostles. So that's kind of what that's based off of, and why we don't accept those groups. If you're denying the Trinity just outright, it's very difficult for you to be included in that.
Yeah, I don't know that the Pentecostal church that I went to, they embraced the Trinity, but they
Right.
did
So there's
say that
oneness. There's oneness
there is
Pentecostal.
one. Yeah.
That is a Unitarian view. But yeah, no, not all Pentecostals deny the Trinity.
No,
You're
no,
correct.
no, no. Um, but the one I went to, it's like you have to have.
Mm.
spoken in the tongues, or you don't have the Holy Spirit, and therefore, if you don't have the Holy Spirit, I guess you're not really
Yeah.
saved. And the other one that I'm aware of is the Church of Christ, which has this idea that you have to be fully baptized, otherwise it doesn't count. And the way that you're baptized has to be certain words said. It can't be. There's like a couple different
Mhm.
ways it's said in the Bible, and they're like it has to be whichever way it is. I forgot now. It's
Yeah.
been too, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so if they're right, all these other Christians are screwed because
Yeah.
that doesn't that's not very fair. And that actually, my exposure to these denominations, realizing they're not fair kind of made me think, well, wait a minute, Christianity, you have to at least accept or believe in certain things, otherwise you're screwed. So that's not fair. And that, I was like, uh-oh, now
Yeah.
what?
So, I mean, I would say a few things to like these very much smaller sects, like oneness Pentecostalism, where like, yeah, you have to speak in tongues, for example. The markers of the church is also very important when we're determining what the true church is. So, being universal, being Catholic, being recognizable. Churches like oneness Pentecostalism, which is kind of like a smaller sect, like in North America, they don't really have the universal Catholic status for which everyone can come to the faith. If you look at Protestant Christianity, it's global. It basically is global, except for places where like they'll kill you if you're a Christian, which even we try and get in and convert people in those areas. So of course, groups are going to make different exclusive claims. Protestantism, especially Reformed Protestantism, has, I think, one of the most compelling views in terms of who can be a part of the church, because it's not just about accepting a list of mental notions. It is also a spiritual thing from the heart for which God changes and we're able to be made a part of His family. So
Yeah, so you said you were, always kind of interested in debating things and going kind of maybe a more intellectual route, if you will. Not saying that you didn't have spiritual stuff, because we touched on that. And this continued through to college. Uh so at some point you decided, I'm going to be on YouTube because everyone's on YouTube. What happened there? Like what made you decide to start a channel, or what kicked that off?
yeah, probably a couple different motivations. One is I find that I'm very motivated to educate myself on the topics if I have to talk about them, right? So if I'm going to talk about presuppositional argumentation, well, I better learn my stuff before I start, talking about it, or I'm going to be made a fool, right? So it does help me study scripture. It helps me study all these different aspects, and so it's kind of a big motivator that way. I kind of like doing the YouTube thing. I have other YouTube channels on completely unrelated topics that I'm not going to talk about here, but I do like doing the YouTube thing. I do like engaging with people, and I learn a lot when I engage with people. And X and YouTube are probably the best places to do that, because you're not just going to debate someone at the grocery store over the preconditions of knowledge or something. They'll look at you like you're crazy.
Now, wait a minute, before you buy that, how can you prove that you're actually holding that thing? What?
Exactly.
Huh? Who are you?
Yeah, right.
Oh, who am I? That is a good question that we've asked ourselves.
I'm about to get kicked out of Safeway after that.
Yeah. Like that'd be kind of a funny comic, maybe. Like you have like Plato and Socrates and Aristotle in line at the checkout, and they can't ever get to the thing to pay because they're all arguing over whatever. It's like
Yeah,
Plato's like,
exactly.
this apple's actually not the real apple. The form of the apple is what I'm holding.
Wouldn't be a bad comic for you. I do like your humorous pieces on your channel, so,
Yeah, thank you.
maybe that is a,
Yeah, maybe I'll
some
do something like that. I don't know. But okay, so now you mentioned debate, and that made a tingle. Have you studied informal and or formal logic at college,
so at college specifically,
or anywhere else for
yeah.
that matter?
So I did have philosophy classes in college. I didn't really care that much while I was doing it because I was studying a very difficult degree at the time. And then later I realized how useful all that reading I did was. Um, in the degree I was in, you study to, a degree in formal and formal logical fallacies. But it's as I've gotten more involved in this sort of apologetic stuff, I've definitely tried to read up on it more and learn more about it and kind of pick it up over time. There's a lot to it, so I'm not going to say I'm a logistician or something like that because I'm not.
Yeah, you
Um,
haven't really necessarily sat down with a single logic book and read it or anything like that, or
just specifically on logic, no, but
uh,
I mean, there's information on online about the list of all the formal fallacies, the list of all the informal fallacies. So I'm somewhat familiar with them all, but like I said, I can't be a
yeah,
master
the
of like literally
right,
everything.
the underlying mechanics. I mean,
Yeah,
that's my thing, is to encourage people to
yeah,
check that out, learn it. I
yeah.
reference the book that
Yeah,
got
like,
me.
I'm familiar with the format of a syllogism and what some basic
Yeah.
and formal fallacies are, so it's like, I'm not gonna be completely clueless on that. I did like your post on, like, how these presidential debates, you're right, are basically
uh
jokes
It's
from a
not even a
formal debate
debate.
standpoint.
It's like
No, it's not.
I don't even know why we call it okay, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah, but
I totally agree with you there that it's basically a sham of intellect, basically. It's
yeah, I
like,
mean,
what's the point?
if you were to have it be an academic debate with points and things like that, that would be very interesting. Like, what's the merits of X policy and or Z thing or whatever, and like the how are you what have you actually done? Let's look at what you've done that we know about and bring up that. Here we go. Here's all the facts on the screen. You know,
Problem is neither of these candidates could, like, make a formal argument probably, so that
No, no,
it would be dead on
well,
arrival.
it would not be these candidates. It would be completely different
Yeah,
candidates, because you'd have to have that to qualify,
yeah,
or they'd hire somebody or whatever. But yeah, I mean, different system. Oh well, all the philosophers rule the world.
yeah,
uh, but yeah, I mean, I try to encourage people to learn, specifically formal logic, but formal logic's good too, but it's more complex. And the book I started with was a informal logic, a pragmatic approach, by Douglas Walton, and so I've referenced that book bazillions of times, probably over the course of years on my
yeah.
channel.
Yeah, if
Uh,
nothing, like, I do like some of the information you have on logic and, of course, you're just gonna be a resource of objections to my position, so I've been
oh
listening to your
yeah,
channel
yeah, yeah.
that up, so and you're
Well,
somewhat entertaining, you're not completely vitriolic, it's like it's not completely just or completely screaming, there is some screaming, but
oh
it's not
yeah, I
com
have to scream. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
the live stuff. I got away from like pre-recorded stuff, and the live stuff's kind of like the lazy go-to, and I'm like, I need to get some more recorded videos, because like my logical fallacy counter hasn't seen the light of day in ages. All these things I used to do, and it's like, yeah, but it's laziness prevails. What are you gonna do?
yeah,
Sometimes you just
exactly.
want to yell at the world. Um, the concept, to get a little bit, now that we've kind of established your background, I have to ask. You mentioned you got into precept. So how did that happen? What happened there? Where was your exposure to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and, really comes down to when you start questioning, your entire worldview per se, um, and people bring up objections and things like that, you begin researching, well, okay, is there any way for me to prove this or make this convincing to myself or someone else? And so, it was actually funny as my brother showed me a debate between Catholicism and Orthodoxy. And so I kind of watched, I'm like, this is pretty interesting. And I started looking into different arguments. And there's actually a very big difference between how different Christian groups will present their claims for God and why they're correct. And in the Reformed tradition, uh, especially, there's a number of theologians who take from earlier church fathers who engage in presuppositional apologetics, and so I started looking into their work. And to me, it just makes the most sense in terms of how we're able to judge the satisfaction of our worldview and how we're able to justify worldviews and things like that. I've just found it the most convincing. I don't find, and when atheists say that classical arguments for God are kind of unjustified, I kind of agree with them. I don't think they're very strong arguments like first cause argumentation or teleological argument. the five ways from Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, I agree. I don't really think those are very good arguments because they're not really arguments for a totality of the entire Christian worldview. And that's what something I was looking for, something that can give an epistemic grounding for the Christian God.
Hmm. And so you feel that this particular tactic is well, the one that is interesting to you, whether or not it's interesting or convinces anyone else. To me, it's just extraordinarily frustrating and annoying to deal with because, well, it's circular in nature, and I just don't. It's like I don't want to play that game. I just don't have any tolerance for it. I never have. It just goes against the fundamental nature of how logic functions. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I understand that's your objection. Um, and I understand that maybe there's a group of people online who um, tend to get very aggressive with it, to a
yeah.
degree. And
Oh yeah.
I'm willing to give a little bit on that, but I think when you're talking about circular argumentation, I think outright everyone has a worldview. Everyone has some form of self-referential starting point that they're gonna have to work with. And so it's not that we're explicitly saying it's special pleading because we're circular. Everyone is circular, or I would say self-referential at some level in their worldview. And so I understand that having a form of circularity, like for example, having vicious circularity, yeah, that is a fallacy. You can't be viciously circular on your argumentation. But at a
Yeah.
paradigmatic level, there are things that are so fundamental, categories that are so fundamental for truth that ultimately they have to be self-referential.
Let's explore that a bit more because I think we've kind of now covered your history and understand. I guess somebody that's jaded like myself might say, well, this poor guy is just he was indoctrinated and he had no chance, and then he found apologetics and now he's really screwed. It's like, but it sounds to me like you did some thinking. Have you did you ever or have you tried to refute your own ideas, to look at not necessarily that there isn't a god, but just that you could be wrong about the version of god that you have or anything like that?
Yeah, there was a time where I was really unsure about my specific religious beliefs, and there was a time where I didn't feel like I had a way to justify it, and so I probably moved towards a form of like, if you ask me, I probably would say I was Christian, but probably really believed in a more of a form of like Platonism or something. Like there was a period like that. Um, and I just didn't feel like the church was really offering me what I needed, or I didn't feel like I was getting what I needed out of it. So yeah, I mean, I had a period of pretty solid questioning. I'm honest with people about that phase happened. So
Well,
um,
that I think that's a good thing. I mean, you don't want to just believe what you believe without any critical examination of the ideas. And some
yeah,
people, unfortunately, many people unfortunately do. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should be skeptical, and people should have justifications for what they believe in, and a lot of people don't really think past that. So, you're right about that. Um, but in the end, we all approach topics. No one has a privileged position of objectivity. We do all have worldviews in the end, and that will affect how we think about things. We try to be objective, but we all have fundamental views on, I would say, the three main categories of a worldview, which is metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology, that is going to affect whatever we're viewing.
yeah, yeah. Um, what what would you say your if you can encapsulate what your epistemology is at all. I have a very simple formula for mine. Do you have a fairly simple way to say what your epistemology is?
Yeah, well, I would say my epistemology is going to be based on revelation, so divine revelation. So that would be the Bible and the scriptures, and the church's preaching through that is going to be the basis for knowledge in my worldview. That's kind of the starting point. And the revelation of the Trinity is going to be fundamental in sort of establishing how the whole worldview is held together. So in Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And that's what's going to be the grounding for the next most certain things, which would be the sort of transcendental categories of like the external world
Yeah.
and things
Well,
like induction or logic or things like that. That's kind of the next most certain, and then empirical judgments are going to be sort of the next in the hierarchy of certainty for me.
right. But the epistemology, it refers to, how do we know when we know is true at all,
Mhm.
kind of thing, right?
Right.
So if I go into it and I say, well, I'm just gonna say that X is true, then X is true no matter what. And so if I'm starting with the idea that that this divine revelation is in fact divine revelation, how did I figure out that it was in fact divine revelation?
Yeah, so of course we're going to admit circularity at a certain level. So I mean, I'm comfortable with that, saying that because the Bible is self-justifying in how it reveals the Creator itself. Yeah, that is the self-referential point of our
But
epistemology. But we argue
what was the
Mhm.
methodology to discover that that was true?
The impossibility of the contrary.
But how would you discover that it's impossible to not be?
Through argumentation and demonstration and metaphysical debate or analysis of the other worldviews and comparison.
Okay, so okay, so that's a more robust epistemology then. Okay, okay, just want to make
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
like,
yeah, no,
yeah,
no,
it's like,
no, yeah, no
yeah,
problem.
yeah, because
Because
yeah, yeah,
I'm not trying to dodge. Honestly,
no,
like
no,
I'm
no,
trying to
no.
kind of give you a
Extracting, no,
comprehensive answer.
extracting that is, that's a difficult thing. Mine is, I'm a simple guy, so I'm like empirical evidence, repeatable test, valid and sound argument. Okay, there, done. Okay,
Right.
that's it. Like, is that it? Yeah, that's it. Basically, scientific method, logic. What do you got? That's it.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like,
Yeah, no, of course. So yeah, that would be hopefully that answers the question.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, the topic of God, obviously, is a fascinating one, even though I think it's a concept. It's kind of like the number one. I find it to be perhaps useful or dangerous depending on how you use it, but to me, that's all it is a concept in our brains. Um, if it's more, that'd be great to find out. I haven't you know found a reason to think it's anything more. How do you view? Yeah, I could guess your answer, but how do you view what God is, especially when the word like relationship comes up? I'm like, well, at best you have a parasocial relationship. It's a one-sided thing where you say hi God and you never hear anything back. So how do you how do you understand God to be a relationship, or how do you view God as a non-object of the mind?
Yeah, so I mean, specifically in the Christian worldview, we believe that God is personal. So he's not this sort of abstract Platonic form for which that we can kind of conceptually analyze. I would say that's more close to a Thomistic Catholic view, actually, because they believe in the doctrine of absolute divine simplicity, which is really you only know God through created effects. And so, if you said something like that about Catholicism, I would say, well, you're not too far off there. But specifically, the Reformed view of the Trinity is God being personal, and specifically the doctrine of the logi, that really the purpose and telos of the universe is Christ, and he is personal at every moment and every point in the universe. And so how we experience God in this life is going to be through the church and the normative means of the church. So through the sacraments, whether it be through the Lord's Supper or through the preaching of the word or through prayer, our prayer life and things like that. And you may say you've never felt a personal experience, and that's your experience. I can't really say that you're not experiencing that necessarily, but through those means, I do feel like we do communicate with God, and He's able to communicate through us through the means of the church in that way. And personally, I do experience Him, and so we don't believe in like a doctrine or in terms of man's what am I thinking here? Or how man is composed. He's not just simply mind, but he's mind, body, and soul. And so through the soul and through the heart of hearts of man is really where we're going to get a lot of that experience with God on a personal level.
Hmm. What on a personal or religious level, whatever you want to take it as, that about last the only peer review Pew research last I looked, and they haven't updated it in a while. They did a study of world religions, and I think it was about 33% of the world is Christian. So that means everybody else is screwed, doomed
Well,
to,
I would disagree with that. Well,
So I was gonna say,
well,
what's your view on it, like, yeah, what's your view on being screwed or going to hell or
yeah.
annihilation or whatever the bad thing is that we're gonna, our pesky atheists have to look forward to?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the reform view of what the church is, God is able to bring whoever He wants, and make him a part of Christ's body. And the means of which that is accomplished, we don't know all the means. We do know the normative means, which is, through the church, a changing of heart and expression of, Jesus dying, taking the punishment for your sins on the cross, and you believing His promise that He is enough to get you to heaven. That's going to be the normative means, but we don't know all the means for which how all of people in the world have been saved, and it's not particularly revealed to us how all the ways are. I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm a universalist. I'm saying everyone's going to heaven. I'm saying we don't make judgments about people who are outside the normative means. They could be saved. We don't know. We don't know who the elect are in
Hmm.
God.
That's interesting. So in your view, it would be hypothetically possible for a pesky, jaded atheist to make it in?
Well, what much is given, much is required, and what little is given, little is required. I'm just going to be honest. It's nothing personal, but for people who are going to outwardly deny the gospel to their deathbed, I can't make final judgments on it. But the fruits of what they're doing definitely shows, what their choice is, and their choice is to not be with God for eternity. So that's just the truth on it. I'm sure you won't take offense to that at all, but that's just the reality of it. But for example, someone born on a tribe somewhere in some island, remote island or something like that, where little was given. We don't know all the means for which they could come to the gospel. We just don't.
Yeah. I tend to think that, if there was a thing judging on us based on what our beliefs were, would understand that the sort of, person that I and other skeptics like myself are, require a certain thing, and that thing isn't being provided for us. So there must be a different way to judge us than, more closer to maybe Zoroastrianism, maybe judged on, what good, how much good or how much bad I've done in the world or something like that. Not that I think I'll be judged at all. I don't know what the bleep's going to happen. Probably just when you're dead, that's it. I don't know. That seems the most likely, as little as I don't want that to be, but whatever. I don't have a choice in the matter. Whatever's real is real.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I wish I could believe, in an afterlife to some degree. Like, I don't know that I even want to say I wish I could believe whatever, because I only want to really believe things that I have empirical evidence, repeatable test, or valid and sound argument for. So,
Yeah. Well,
like,
would a proposition like that be found in empirical evidence?
or repeatable test or valid and sound argument, it might
No,
be.
that statement you made, is that found in the
What?
world
What
material?
statement?
The statement you made about empirical, I only believe in things that are found in
Empirical
empirical.
evidence, repeatable test, and or
Yeah.
valid and sound
Yeah.
argument.
Is that proposition
Yes.
found? Oh, it
The
is. Okay.
yes, valid and
How is it
sound
found?
argument part, because
The
it's
valid
based
and
on,
sound argument.
yeah, it is a valid. I can create a valid and sound argument for the idea that we need a valid and sound argument.
No, but I'm talking about the whole proposition.
Oh, yes, and empirical evidence and or repeatable tests. Yes, those things would also fall under uh, a valid and sound argument part of the criteria. I could
Oh, okay.
construct a truth. I could construct a truth table if I needed to. I've done it. It's boring. Uh, I could do it. The question would be, do you understand truth tables?
Oh no, you don't have to construct a truth table.
No,
I'm not
but I'm just
actually.
saying,
I'm actually not trying to.
I
Oh, I'm
would
not trying.
do it. No, but I'm saying I would do it. Then the
Okay.
question would be to the otherwise worthy opponent that I might have. I'd be like, sure, I could do it, but do you even understand a truth table? And the answer would probably be no. you know,
Yeah.
because
I
if you haven't studied informal logic and or formal logic, then there's no way you're going to know what the bleep of truth table is, even if you see it. It's
yeah. I
too.
wasn't actually. I actually wanted to just hear what your response was. I'm not
Yeah,
trying
no,
to.
it's
This isn't
yeah,
a
no.
debate. I
No,
wasn't
I
trying to
know
do.
that. No,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've been asked that many times, like, oh, can you be skeptical about skepticalness? Like, yes, you can. You run the test once and then that's it. You go, well, should I be skeptical of things or should I just believe everything? Well, if I just can believe everything, then I can believe that I can be skeptical about things. So that's the end of that. You could look at it that way. But to be skeptical from my point of view, I outlaid it in full in my Nut Suck episode, where I did a Time Suck podcast parody, but I called it Not Suck. And the Venn diagram of people that understand what the hell time suck is and would watch any of my videos is apparently very small. But whatever, I made the episode anyways. Yeah. I don't care.
I got you off topic. If you had more questions on who is saved or whatever, I can.
Yeah. Who's saved? Darn it! Got me talking about myself. This will never end. We'll be here for 10 hours now.
I derailed the whole conversation.
That's all right. Sorry, but being saved, all that. I like the idea that you don't know, and that's less judgmental. I like that.
It's not that we don't completely know. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not a universalist. We do know the normative means for which people come to Christ, but that doesn't mean we cast judgment on everyone who is, not a part of, the invisible church. So, because only God really knows who's saved and knows their heart. So, I don't know your heart.
I don't even know if I know that. Let's talk a little bit about what is truth. Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. But I view this word to be equal to whatever reality actually is. Now, obviously, our perceptions can fail us at some point. Hopefully, they're working well enough for us to survive. We're here. We can hear each other, so our hearing is working. Our visualness probably is working. If something goes wrong, either we'll notice or somebody from the outside will notice, right? But whatever reality is, that would be true. How do you view this word true?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I would say truth is what comports to reality. So, I mean, I don't know if that's your exact definition, but that's how I would view it. Obviously, there's different ways in which truth can be expressed, capital T, truth, or, truth in a logical sense. Obviously, not all words have one sort of rigid designator.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Natural language.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I've heard you use that phrase quite a bit. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. No, natural language, is this is what we're doing now. You and I have to assume that the other person knows the words that we're saying, and by and large, we do, because we can communicate. But when you're dealing with more technical topics like these topics, you're going to want to know what the other person thinks any given word is, if that word is going to be really important. And you mentioned, truth, and, looking at it like, okay, here's these divine revealed truth. I'm going to start there and then assume that, for whatever reason, or find that this is true, and then, go from there. The method to get to the point where you discover that this is divine revelation, as opposed to, any other divine revelation out there, that's the methodology that I'm more interested in, because once you're there, then you go, okay, well, I can run with that and do all sorts of fun things with that. And that gets into the precept stuff that I hate. But what, the before but the before stuff, that's what's interesting to me. And I think to others, when I have these talks, to try to understand why people believe what they believe, and is it just a matter of, well, you grew up with it? Well, that's kind of a simple answer, though, because you've been exposed to other ideas online, if nothing else. So, that people don't agree with you because they believe in the Hindu stuff, or the Egyptian stuff, or the non-stuff like us, or whatever.
Was that a question? I'm sorry.
I don't know. No, it's not a question, but answer it anyways.
Yeah. Of course, it comes down to, I do think, reductios are valid arguments, and so the impossibility of the contrary in terms of a comparison of worldviews, I do think is a valid way to look at the question, and that's what is convincing to me. Because in terms of, let's just say, other religions, for example, Christianity has a very specific kind of metaphysics, a very specific kind of way it's revealed and structured that makes it internally coherent in a way the other views are not. And so immediately that helps us rule out basically most of our, or not all of the religious views, just based on a few very basic fundamental assumptions they'll make at a paradigm level in terms of their metaphysics.
How much study does one have to do to come to that conclusion, given how many religions there are out there, though?
Right. Well, because there's only a few sort of starting fundamental, I would say, assumptions that could be made at a paradigm level, you're going to end up refuting a lot of the religions. Like, for example, is there teleology? Like, is there purpose in the universe? There's a yes or no answer to that. And if a religion says no, there's no purpose, well, that's going to immediately going to rule it out because that's self-refuting. Or,
Why would that? Why would that be?
If there's no purpose in the universe?
Yeah, why would that rule it out?
Because any form of debate is going to presuppose that you're true, that valued statements can be true or false, and that there's purpose to actually being there, and there's actually meaning to things. And so if you're saying, well, there's no meaning to things, but I'm trying to say something to convey meaning, that would be self-refuting.
I think there might be a problem with the word meaning, like if we see a rock in the middle of the woods, and we see a bear scratch itself on the rock. Well, that the reason why the rock is there is so the bear can scratch itself. Would that be a fair extrapolation to make?
I mean, well, it depends on the worldview, right? So this is where we get to the worldview comparisons, because I don't believe that there's like some sort of objective stance for which we view this event. It's going to be filtered through your paradigm. But let's say, for example, and I'm not necessarily like trying to directly attack this or whatever, but in a view where there's no meaning, it's just a bunch of matter colliding into each other. There's no real objective meaning out there. You're just seeing some things with your sense data, which we don't even know to be reliable. That's happening out there. There's no meaning to it.
Right. Well, there's still a meaning of the words, if nothing else.
Why?
Well, because that's how they're used. They're used to construct a narrative, even if the narrative is illusionary.
A bunch of people came up with the words. Why do they mean anything?
Because they mean things to those people.
That's
it's kind of like
that would be just begging the question.
No.
They have meaning.
Yeah, no, they have meaning because they have to have meaning. It's like an axiom, basically.
So that would be more of a form of they have to have meaning because the impossibility of the contrary, that anything else is absurdity. That's more of a transcendental argument. So that's closer to something I would make for words having meaning, the external world, moral things like that. And those arguments aren't material and they have to be grounded somewhere. That's the point of
the point of the rock in the woods, the rock doesn't necessarily have to have meaning at all. It could just be a rock. It's just there. It's chilling out. It's not doing anything. There's no meaning to it. It's just a rock. The bear scratching itself, it could have scratched itself on anything. And it shows the rock. The rock was there. It was handy, But that doesn't mean the meaning of the rock was so that the bear could scratch itself, Yeah,
I mean, on a materialist worldview, there's no meaning there. It's just some chemical reaction.
Well, is there a meaning? Is there a meaning there on a spiritual realm view or a supernatural worldview or
there is.
What is the meaning of the rock?
Well, meaning the rock? Well, it depends on what the context in which you're referring to.
Well, in that case, there's a rock. Okay, so that rock was that rock put there so that eventually a bear could scratch itself?
Well, God's providential plan, that's what has occurred in his plan. And so you can say that's one of the meanings of, part of the created order.
But then after it served its purpose, when it just like crumbled to dust, I mean, it served its purpose, so now it doesn't have a meaning.
It doesn't have a meaning. Well, in terms of like, what do you mean meaning?
Well, it had a meaning before that. It had a purpose to it. There, was put there for the bear, but now the bear.
Yeah, I mean, it can still crumble into dust, and
It's
still
like,
be
what's the
served
point of it?
part of
Yeah.
the created order.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, once it's served its purpose, then it doesn't have a meaning anymore, right?
Once it serves its purpose, well, its purpose is still continual as being a part of the created order. You're just presupposing that once it's finished that one operation, that its purpose has been fulfilled. That's not necessarily
So it
in that.
has other purposes that can't be determined.
I don't understand the question. What?
I'm just saying that the ultimate purpose of this rock would never be determinable, because it's like, well, maybe its purpose was for the bear to scratch itself. Well, but something could happen later on. It has a different purpose. We don't know. We'll never know, kind of thing. Is that right? Or
Well, I mean, things are part of the created order. I mean, they can serve in multiple ways. I mean, I don't see why it has to be one. Well, the only purpose of a rock in sort of this teleological sense is just to be for the bear to sit on it. I mean, matter in the created order as a purpose and serves to be the domain for which, man was given domain over creation. And so it's there to be a part of that. I guess I don't quite understand the question. Maybe it's my ignorance of what you're getting at.
yeah,
And
no,
I'm willing to accept that, but
I'm just exploring
sure.
the idea of, meaning and truth and all this sort of thing with you. I'm not, trying to pin you. It's not, pinned down
Maybe
or anything.
if I gave a more comprehensive sort of
Yeah,
definition of
because
what
I mean, I didn't understand why, going back, I didn't really understand why it would be an instant, if the religion or belief system or whatever it is says, there's no meaning, that automatically you say, oh, well, that one can't be right, moving on, and that knocks down however many belief systems that knocks down.
right. I would just say
It's
if
like, what
there's no
decide
meaning.
yeah
Sorry.
yeah it's like,
Yeah,
what decides this chart of, like, I'm gonna assign a 0 point or a 1 point to this, chart of things that I'm looking for. It's like, I could say, well, the only meaningful the only meaningful worldviews are going to be those without any meaning, and so that leads me towards
I would say
Buddhism and
yeah,
Hinduism, maybe.
I would say that's kind of self-refuting because you're trying to make a meaningful statement while saying there's no meaning to it.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's the true nature of reality, then that's the true nature of reality. What are you going to do about it?
Well, then it can't be the true nature of reality because it's self-refuting. That's the point.
But it isn't. That's what I'm saying. Is that the only thing that you can say about it is that it all just is here, and there isn't really any rhyme or reason to it. It's just, we're here. That's it. Make the most of it.
Yeah.
You get reincarnated a few times.
I kind of get what you're getting. What you're getting at now. So
it's like, here's
the parts of our worldview, for example, teleology and things like that. There's nothing that in our worldviews you can just simply isolate that don't presuppose the other parts of the worldview. So,
yeah,
for
but
example,
if
you're talking about meaning, you also have to talk about now value judgments. Now, there's no value to any proposition at all, moral propositions, and so
right.
Ethics is going to play a role in that. And if there's no meaning to anything, then there's no meaning to anything epistemologically, and then it makes knowledge impossible. And so saying the statement, there's no meaning to anything in reality, eventually that would be an epistemic self-defeater because knowledge would be impossible.
Well, you could rephrase it and say the only meaning is this sentence.
The only meaning is this sentence. But that's still, for example, I think that still presupposes a number of things.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm just having fun with it. It's like,
it
could be the true state of reality. Like, the only thing that matters is this sentence and nothing else. Also, this sentence is immune to logical fallacy. So there, that was a big load of things. And you just see these, like, a huge sentence, like, carved in the molecules of the universe. You're like, dang nabbit.
Yeah, I like that. That's pretty funny.
But I don't think that that's what it is. But I don't. It would be interesting for you to parse out, and well, that would be a good video for you to actually do, rather than the videos you've done, which aren't really you yet.
Yeah. It's always fun to, like, kind of just stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah, here's this, like, list that you have, right? Of, like, here, and it's fine, whether it's arbitrary or not, or I object to it or not, doesn't matter. But at least we understand you to some degree. It's like, I went through this list and said anything that doesn't have a meaning, that's gone. Anything that doesn't have this is gone, and and so on, whatever that list would look like. I think that would be interesting to me, if nobody else. So make that video for me, because I'm the only one that matters now.
Yeah, I think I posted the clips because it got the discussion going, and then I kind of learned what people are talking about, and so that kind of is able for me to direct, like, what I'm going to do next. I think what I was going to do next is really talking about moral issues, is kind of what I'm probably the most versed on, in terms of the transcendental argument. I think that's a very strong one, in my opinion. So that's kind of what I was going to head to next. I was going to break down a lot of Sam Harris's argumentation. I don't know if you even like him.
I've listened to him, but I'm not really super,
I don't find his argumentation for his objective moral system very convincing at all.
I don't really know it that well. I have my own view of how to view moral / ethics. It's fairly, again, very simplistic, dumbed down, because I'm a dummy kind of thing. Like, okay, let's you and I play chess. Okay, so there's a rule set, and pretty much for whatever reason, this rule set's like known, I don't know how widely, but pretty well known throughout the world, in the zeitgeist of society. And there might be a few things you don't know, like like I learned about the dang Fox pass, and I was like, the what? It's like a pawn passes a pawn, and you can take the pawn. I'm like,
it's insane. I remember
didn't know you could do that. Yeah, the Queen's Gambit. Like, I didn't know you could do that. Yeah. So, but at any rate, the point is, to play the game, we have to agree to play by the rules. And the moment that either of us breaks from the rules, we're not playing the game anymore. And so we have to stop playing, because it's like, I don't want to play with you. You're breaking the rules. I don't want to. Okay, fine. Then we're not going to play the game. And that's the end of that. And so while we're playing, the rules are objective because we decided to play by them. Ultimately, the rules were subjective because somebody made them.
Ultimately, they're arbitrary.
Yeah, ultimately they're arbitrary. But as long as we're playing, both agree to play by the rules, and we continue to play, then the rule set becomes objective in that sense. But subjective ultimately. But maybe there's no way out of it, because even if you say, well, deity, God, thing, more powerful, whatever it is, a wizard, made these rules, it's like, yeah, but you could have picked that wizard's rules or that deity's rules to follow, So.
I've heard you say this before, and I think I would just respond in this way. And it could be people have presented bad theology to you, so that's not really your fault. People don't argue it properly, but basically we viewed the morality, it's an extension of God's nature. It's not an arbitrary thing he chose, but it's an extension of who he is and who his eternal nature is. And so that's
but
why it's not.
No, what I mean by that is you're still choosing to agree to that.
I'm still choosing to agree to it. Well, it's more that's an interesting question. I like that. I'm choosing to agree to it. Well, yeah, of course we have free will, and so of course I'm going to choose to abide by God's law. So we do have to choose to, abide by.
And
God's
somebody
law,
could abide by some other God's law, whether that God is real or not.
Because we believe the moral principles are an objective part of his nature and an objective part of the created order.
That doesn't negate the problem. The problem is they've chosen a different God to follow.
Well, it doesn't matter that they've chosen a different God. That doesn't make it right.
It matters a lot,
because there's a diversion of opinions that doesn't then follow.
But it's an unresolvable difference of opinion in this case. So what you have is, here's a scenario. You have
people, just because they have a diversion of opinion on something doesn't mean they're both incorrect. That's not how it works.
Well, here's the scenario, okay? With divine command theory, which is what we're talking about now, which is the ethical system. So you have person A and person B. And person A, their God that they've selected for whatever reasons, whatever reason, doesn't matter. Their God says, kill everybody that wears a hat on Sunday. And you have person B, and their God says, always wear hats on Sunday.
I'm familiar with this argument, and it doesn't matter, because that's not how we would go about these things. We would show that one worldview is true, one worldview is not true.
How would you do that? both of them
But
insist that God. Both of them
comparisons of the
insist. No,
Well, you have to give me specific examples. You can't just give me, well, one says A, one says B. You have
that's
to.
it for this
Whether the
scenario.
rule-
That's it. The
well, if
rule.
it's not Christian, well, if both of you
It
are not
doesn't
Christian,
matter what. It doesn't matter what it is.
No, it
And the
does
thought
matter.
in the thought
Does-
experiment, they both say that it's God. They both say that God can't be questioned, and they both say that my
well,
rules require us to kill you
have
on
to let
Sunday.
Okay. Well, for example, if it's Christianity versus another view,
But
you
it's
have
not.
to. It's just two people saying God. So one person said God told them to kill somebody.
The one religion says God says to kill people who wear hats on Sunday. The other religion says wear hats on Sunday.
The other religion says wear hats on Sunday.
Yeah, their God told them to wear hats on Sunday. That's what they say. So the first religion's going to come and try to kill the second religion because they're wearing hats on Sunday, and the other person was told, kill people that wear hats on Sunday.
Yeah, well, it's a false analogy. I mean, I don't even reject.
It's not an analogy. It's a thought experiment.
Thought experiment. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that murder is right. I mean, I don't know what you want out of.
But God is telling them to do it, so they're perfectly justified.
That's not God telling them to do it.
Of course, it is.
No.
In the thought experiment, it is. Both
okay, well, you
people
can't construct a separate universe where different things happen. We believe God is true in this universe.
But no, this is a thought experiment to try to figure out.
Thought experiment doesn't prove anything.
No, that it's the whole point of a thought experiment is to get you to think, not to prove anything.
Okay, so what is the point? I don't.
The point is you have two people or two groups of people, doesn't matter. Two people is easier though. And they both claim that they have a unquestionable system coming from a God. And one says to kill people that do this activity of wearing hats. The other says, hey, wear hats. And so, of course, they're, the one people that go, hey, those people wearing hats, we got to go kill them. Now, the people that are wearing hats, they're not too happy about being killed. So, of course, they're going to wind up fighting each other. And the problem is you want to sit them down at the negotiation table and work out their problems, right? And say, look, you guys don't need to kill them. That's silly. And they said, no, but our God said to do it. And our God's, of course, right. And our God is just. And our God tells us what to do. And they say, but our God told us to wear hats. How could they, either one of them, they're both insisting that God said to do it. God can't be wrong. And you can't challenge God. So how can they possibly ever negotiate under those conditions? And I don't think that they can. And that's why religion has gone to war with other religion in the past, present, and in the future.
Yeah, well, I don't. That's not a refutation of the Christian worldview.
It's not meant to be. It's meant to get.
I mean, that's fine. You can have a thought experiment.
It's meant to
the true or falsity of it.
Because you need to think about things. And
yeah, but how does that comport to the real world? Are you gonna make an actual argument?
Well,
are
you thinking about it, or are you just dismissing it?
Well, because I don't accept the premise for how it's set up. I don't think it's set up properly. Because we don't view events like that. We view things. Worldviews. People have worldviews. That's how.
But this isn't about all that. This is a thought experiment.
Exactly. You don't want to discuss worldviews. You don't want to.
No, this is a thought experiment to get you to think. So, do you want to think, or do you want to not?
Okay, well, I mean, I'll admit that. Yeah, there false religions that fight each other. Absolutely, I don't.
Okay, so only false religions fight each other.
There can be true religions that fight each other, or the true religion, Christianity, can fight another religion. Yeah, it's happened in the past. Okay,
so you think you're true, the other person thinks they're true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That doesn't have anything to do with what's actually objectively true.
Correct. But when you can't question your God, which you can't,
doesn't matter.
They can't question their. Because you're not. Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking for why it matters, and you keep saying
because
that doesn't make sense. You need to actually give a reason.
Okay.
All right. I mean, well, in your view, why does it matter at all if one group of people slaughter?
You don't know. You don't know why it would matter under my view.
Yeah. Why, in your view, would it matter if a group of people slaughtered another group of people?
Why would it matter? Because we value life.
Why?
Because we do. It's built into us.
That's not a justification.
Doesn't matter. That's the way it is.
Oh, justify views. Okay.
Yeah. So my conclusion, based on this improv to non-debate that we didn't have, is you don't want to think, which would be a very, very bad conclusion.
My conclusion would be that you don't want to give a justification for fundamental parts of your worldview.
I don't have a worldview.
Yeah, you have a worldview. Everyone has a worldview.
No, I don't.
You have a way in which you approach ethics, epistemology, and metaphysics.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No. My worldview is that I have no worldview.
You don't have a way of which you approach ethical decisions in your life?
No, my worldview is that I have no worldview.
Your worldview is you have no worldview? That would still be a worldview.
Oh, no, but but see, the worldview says my worldview is free of logical fallacies and immune to them, and declares that there isn't a worldview.
A worldview is a worldview. That's what you know.
But see, the thing is, I don't even know what my worldview is in full.
Still a worldview.
Huh?
You can't. That doesn't help you escape the problem.
Well, there is no problem.
Because there's a fundamental way for which you approach ethics, metaphysics, and
there's the approach that I'm trying to take in regards to DCT is to outline the impossibility of negotiation between two differing people.
How is that relevant to this discussion on worldviews? It's not relevant.
It's not about worldviews. I'm talking about the problem of DCT.
Disagree. Who cares? Why does
it
matter?
I do.
Why?
Because they can't resolve that.
Why?
If they can't resolve that disagreement with negotiate. Okay, I'm going to mute you if you do that again. It's annoying.
Well, they're just bags of matter.
Okay.
Into other bags of matter. Why does it matter?
If that's really how you think, then you're the one with the problem.
Oh,
that's why I don't like precept. This is why I don't like precept. You've gotten extraordinarily arrogant towards the end here.
Okay, well,
so I'm just going to turn it to questions from the audience, and we're going to be done.
Okay, that's fine. But all I'm saying is, you asked me to think about the thought experiment, and I explained to you why it doesn't accomplish.
No, you ran away from it and didn't respond to it. Why
it doesn't work?
No, you didn't.
And when I asked for justification, you didn't give a justification.
Because you don't want to engage in logic.
Well, you're the one who didn't give the justification for your ethics. You said it just did.
It's not about ethics. I was talking about this thought experiment that talks about DCT.
And then I explained why it doesn't accomplish what you want to.
You don't even know what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to accomplish is getting you to think about stuff. Goodness forbid you think about stuff, right?
And explain
Goodness
why
forbid. Christianity has to be right. Everyone else has to be wrong. But the lobsterist is the only one that's really right. The lobsterist. You haven't read the lobsterist. That's the problem. You haven't refuted the lobsterist yet. Nobody's ever actually refuted it. You haven't even read it yet.
Red Lobster is a great restaurant.
No, the lobsterist. Have you read the lobsterist? Have you read it yet, though? See, I know you haven't read it, because if you had read it, you'd say it was true. But you haven't read it, have you? So you're not up to the challenge of debunking the lobsterist. So my challenge to you is to debunk the lobsterist if you care about the truth.
Okay.
All right. So you're not taking that seriously. That's the problem. Is this guy Calvinist? No, he's a Baptist.
So Reformed and Presbyterian is heavily influenced by Calvinist theology. So yeah, I would be somewhere in that. I have disagreements with Calvin's theology, so it's not going to be fully reflective of that. But Reformed theology definitely reflects a lot of that.
Nerdy Rodin asks, what is the deductive version of the transcendental argument?
Like some sort of a syllogism, or
what is the deductive version of the transcendental argument?
Well, I would just say that X is the proper preconditions of Y, posit Y, therefore X. I could be doing that wrong.
Say that again.
X is the preconditions of Y, If you prove y or posit y, therefore x.
That's painful. Okay. Is it something logical because God says it, or is it logical because it's inherently so? I know what that is.
So logic is an extension of God's nature, but God is beyond logic. So he's not like entrapped by logic or held to the logical laws itself.
God doesn't obey the law of identity.
God doesn't obey the law of identity. No, God, it's an extension of his. So he's above those laws itself, and they're extensions.
So the law of identity doesn't apply to God.
Well, there's an analogy between the law of identity we find in the created order and God itself, but it's not going to be a one-to-one analogy.
So which came first, the law of identity or God?
Well, God is eternal, and those laws are going to be an extension of his nature. So they're, in a sense, a part of that.
So God's under the law of identity then?
No.
Okay, so God's above so God doesn't cohere
He's
to
not
the law
withholding
of
and
identity.
bound to those laws.
So he doesn't follow
And
the law of
and the laws and a part of, well, so I have to explain the entire doctrine, but because God
just either it does or it doesn't. So does God obey the law of identity?
You can't set these false either ors. And look, dude,
no, that's a true either.
We could have set up a debate, but you wanted to set up.
I don't want to debate you because I don't want to debate precept.
Okay,
what's the purpose of a hat?
Depends. Sometimes it's keep the sun off your forehead, you know.
Okay, is that the transcendental purpose of a hat, or is that the normative purpose of a hat that you're assigning to it arbitrarily?
Well, it depends. The entire purpose of the created order is for us to have domain over it, and it's a part of God's eternal plan. But sometimes things can have normative purposes as well.
Let's see. Yes. What would you consider to not be evidence for God?
Oh, I'm sorry. It said at can be converted man, but it's for me, of course. Okay. So I mean,
well, he's adding me, so I would see it.
But yeah. No. I just realized that. I was trying not to speak over you because I've done too much of that this time. But so like in our view, for example, because God is the ultimate precondition, we believe all evidence is for the Christian worldview. Doesn't mean that there cannot be forms of psychological doubt that occur. So people can have psychological doubts, but in terms of certainty, we believe that all the evidence points towards the Christian God.
So there's no way to falsify it.
Well, because he's the ultimate precondition for knowledge itself and the criteria for truth and falsifiety.
So there's no way to falsify it.
You're just not going to listen to the answer. Okay.
So no, I'm saying so there's no way to falsify it.
In the view.
So is there a way to falsify it? Yes or no?
Because God is the precondition for knowledge and the criteria itself, he has to be the ultimate precondition. And so no evidence is going to be able to falsify that.
So there's no way to falsify it. Got it. Thank you.
That's the answer.
No, that's the answer. Is there's no way to falsify God. Just say it. It's easy. God isn't subject to his own nature? Then it's not his nature. Well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Do you want me to respond to that or?
Nah. Got him. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a thing. And before I derail it too more, I told you I'd go crazy at the end. See, this is the end. See, all the thing that I did, that was part of it. Sure, we'll go with that. Yeah, that works.
It got a little feisty in the middle, but
that's okay. But no, it's good because I look, it's gonna happen. We're people. We have emotions, but we were both able to remain civil towards each other, despite me wanting to do things that were not right. But we did it. We somehow did it.
You pulled it off. And I appreciate.
We made it. And it's difficult, but I appreciate you going through that difficulty and not giving up. And I also appreciate that I was not giving up either. That and that any disagreement that we have that we both are passionate about trying to figure things out.
Yeah, and I appreciate the the tough questions. And look, some of them I didn't do the best answering. I'll
No,
just
it's
admit
okay.
that.
It's
I'm gonna, and
fine.
if it was a debate, I would actually spend a month preparing for a debate.
Oh,
But I was
yeah,
told
I
this was a
mean,
discussion, and I'm
no,
not trying. So
neither am I, right?
and then you hit, and then
I think that
with
the
questions at the end, I honestly just logged on after work. So like,
yeah. I
want a
think
full
that
debate, I would
the
have prepped for a debate, is what I'm
yeah
saying. So,
the emotional element, I think, comes in for you. That what I recognized was the sort of flippant attitude, if you will, and then that triggered my defense mechanisms, and whether or not you meant to do that or not, who knows, but it might be my problem and not your problem. I don't know. I can't analyze that properly. All I can do is say,
I raised the temperature too.
no, it's like who it doesn't, but it's interesting because you can say, hey, look, okay, we can step back and go, okay, how can we approach it in the future? And I think one way would be the tendency, for whatever reason, with precept, is to say your worldview this, your worldview that. Don't do that, because that's going to put the person on defense. Rather say, what is your worldview? Let me understand you, because you can't go after my ideas unless you understand them, right?
No, that's fair. But you were asking me very detailed questions about my worldview, and like I said, I didn't prepare for a debate.
Simple questions about reality. Okay. I mean,
and
of course. Right.
I hadn't prepared for a debate. It's like I'm not gonna have the most fleshed out answers for everything, and especially if I were to debate you, I would have definitely binge watched everything on deductive logic, and I would have definitely binged all that stuff. But
I've got a number of playlists for a logical lecture from, I think, Harvard or MIT. I'm not sure which now. I have tons of things I could send you on logic if you're at all wanting to. And I mean, that's that's the main thing. For whatever crazy reason, I decided that the way to get people interested in logic is to do this. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I certainly would send you everything I have on it if you want any of that.
I don't mind studying any of that, and like I said, I'm not going to have every comprehensive answer ever for for your chat as well. But everyone asks good questions, and I appreciate those, and I hope to just study more and address them as I go.
And I appreciate your time and energy to do this, and I don't think that anyone was expecting you to have all the answers, and nobody has all the answers. If we had all the answers, well, then we would be God, wouldn't we? I guess. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. If is that like a pre-requirement to being God, is to have all the answers? Like,
all knowing. I'm pretty sure.
Like, I mean, maybe, but what if it like, what if God doesn't know all the things, like, but it's still God? Just because we think that you have to have certain attributes to be God, that doesn't mean that that's how it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those, like, how many angels dances on a pin sort of questions or whatever. It's like there's no, I guess, there's hypothetical ways to answer it.
How many cheese sticks are on Mars, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think.
I'm joking.
Well, if the moon's made out of cheese, then I think there'd be at least 5.
At least 5.
At least 5.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a prime number. I'm not sure 5 is a prime number. I don't know math.
Look, I mean, I appreciate you're a larger channel. You had me on. I think it was fun. I think it was a fun back and forth. I think we all had a good time.
Yeah. Thank you for your time and energy. Now, I promised myself I was going to remember the name Tom. Yes, I did it. I almost said Bob. I was like, it's not Bob. It's not Bob. Stop saying Bob. It's not Bob. Remember, it was Transcendental Omega Machine, or whatever the bleep I said at the beginning. What was the 3 words I said at the beginning? It was all a test.
Transcendental Omega Machine is way better than what it was at the beginning.
I don't remember what it was at the beginning, but that was better. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what it isn't. All right. Thanks so much, Bob. That's your new name now.
Awesome. Love it.
No. Tom is much better than that. Transcendental Omega Machine. Yes, that is it from now on, and we're gonna draw him an avatar that looks like that somehow. All right, I'll give you the last words to say, and then I'll hit the button, and we'll be done with this insanity.
Oh yeah, I'll just say just thanks for having me on, and I think it was a fun discussion, and even if I wasn't prepared for every question, people ask good questions, and I appreciate it, and sometimes you gotta go back to the drawing board and see what you can do better, and that's what it's about. So,
all right, and button.